Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Mallet versus simple steam locomotives. He and John's right, because at the museum they keep talking about the let's see, where is it, the Yellowstone, and they keep talking about it. It's a mallet, and a mallet. I looked it up because John had me. It was I got curious about it, and Anatole Mallet in France came up with the idea of mallet, the mallet. And he did two things. To be a mallet, it has to be articulated like this one was. This is the first one in the U.S.
Uh-huh.
And the cylinders, the rear cylinders, are fixed to the frame, and the front cylinders pivot. There's a pin. You can see it behind the third driver there, and that whole set pivots there. And so when they go around a curve, that set of drivers will move, and the steam pipe is there's two connections. You can see right under the stack. It allows steam to go down, and it's just turning, and so it's not a flexible tube or anything. But so Mallet had the rear cylinders were fixed to the frame. The front drivers pivoted so that you could go around sharp curves with an engine like this. The second thing that he did is he did compounding. He thought, as like we talked about a month ago, the steam engines are only about 6% efficient because they only use the steam once. They take it, say from 175 pounds, and then they exhaust it to the atmosphere, and most of that energy gets lost. So he said, well, we should
recycle it.
Yeah, and so what they do is they take the rear cylinders, get the high pressure steam. They found that works best, and then the front cylinders gets the steam from the rear drivers, and then that gets exhausted out the stack. So you can see that there's a pipe there. It comes down from the steam dome. I guess we can't see it. It must be under the lagging to the front cylinders, and then there's a big pipe there that goes from the front cylinders to the rear cylinders, and then the rear cylinders say get steam at about 70 pounds or something like that. So they use the steam twice, and it does improve efficiency quite a bit. But the problem is it's uneven, and so they were a little bit they're harder on the track because the front cylinder is more of a smooth piston operation, whereas the rear cylinders are smooth operation because that's higher pressure, and the front cylinders it's kind of a sudden thing that all right, 75 pounds, you got this big, huge, you can see a big, huge cylinder. They're twice as big as the one in front, and it goes bam, slams it back, and then the pressure drops off, so it gets this pounding on the track. And so before World War II, most of the companies had either changed the engines to what they call simple, and that's like, this is a simple. The Yellowstone is a simple. It's articulated, but it's not a mallet. And John is right about that it's not a mallet because it's not compound. It has to be a mallet. It has to be articulated, and it has to be compound. And in fact, I was looking to see, there was one picture of a simple mallet. Well, you can't be a simple mallet. It's either a mallet or it's not. So anyway, but he was upset because they keep talking about this thing as a mallet, and it's not. And so most of the railroads got rid of their mallets because they were good at first, but it gradually, for very slow, they were slow speed, and they were good for grades and stuff like that. But they really pounded the track, and a lot of maintenance on the front parts. So then they decided, well, what happens if we superheat the steam and have a feed water heater and make some efficiency improvements, and then we run all the steam to all four cylinders at the same time, and that way they get a nice smooth operation, even though they run separately. I mean, you'll hear them sometimes they're in sync and sometimes they're not, depending on curves and things like that, and one slips, but they're totally independent. But it's much smoother operation, and they still get pretty good efficiency with the other stuff. So this is a simple articulated rather than, and so John's right. People misuse the term mallet a lot.
Do you know what the steam going into the rear cylinders, what the PSI was?
This, like say this engine, I don't know what railroad that is, but that's something from about mid-20s. That'd be 200 pounds going into the rear cylinders, and then when it exhausts into the front cylinder probably at 75, 80 pounds, something like that, or maybe 90 pounds if they're really going full blast.
So it'll be over 100 pounds of difference then.
Oh yeah, because the steam has been used, if you will, in the rear cylinders in the high pressure stage, and then it gets exhausted into the so it's pushed. It's the energy has been taken out of it as it pushes the rod back on the rear cylinders, and then when it exhausts, it goes right up to the front cylinders, and then that has to push the front rod, and so the back pressure would vary, but it would probably be 75, 80, 90 pounds, something like that. So generally, the front cylinder was twice as big as the rear cylinder. So,
and why was it twice as big?
Because the pressure is half. They want to try to get as much, at least approximately the same force on the going on the front rod as they have on the rear rod. And if you're back, say of 100 square inches, and you're at 200 pounds, you multiply those the area of that. And that would give you your force, right? 100 times 200. Well, in the front cylinder, I have only got, say, 90 pounds. And so you got to make that cylinder twice the area in order to get the same force.
I see.
Because it's very, it's force times PSI, pounds per square inch times square inches. Gives you pounds.
Well, how would they fill the front cylinders with enough steam to create that force? If it had dissipated over 100 psi, were they able to collect enough steam off the rear
everything in the all of the steam in the rear cylinders goes to the front cylinder.
So they didn't lose any then?
No, they didn't lose any steam. It just loses pressure. A little bit of pressure and temperature.
Did they have any? Did they have to overcome any problems with condensation when it dropped that much in pressure?
Well, on starting they did. Like any other, they'd have to run quite a while with the blowdown valve open. But once they got going, it was especially later when they superheated it. They had enough superheat that it wouldn't condense. So, but by the 40s, everybody, I think the only articulateds in the country were the Norfolk and Western continued to perfect their Y series of, it's a 2882, and it I think I got a picture of one. Let me get off this for a second while we're talking about it. And they were in love with it. It happened to be a very, very good engine, and it let's see, here we are.
Was that a Yellowstone?
It's actually a 2882, not a 2884. So I think I have a picture of the model. Let me find the model here. Let me see here. I have a picture of one that I bought it with a Pennsylvania tender because I like the Pennsy. and the Pennsylvania bought some of them from the New York, Norfolk and Western. Let me see if I can find that one.
Did they like to use them in hilly country?
Yes, yes. And the Norfolk and Western has got those hills. So a Y6, and it's Pennsylvania, but most of them were on the New York or the Norfolk and Western. It's really the only, after probably the late 30s, it's the only compound articulated that was running true Mallet that was running around the country. And they were actually able to just fine tune this thing. This is the Y6. So they went through 5 models and it got better and better. The first ones they used only on mine runs, slow speed. This one they couldn't go real fast with them, but they were pretty good. But it actually is a compound. So it was like 300 PSI going to those rear cylinders, and then the rear cylinder here exhausts into this big pipe here, and then that goes down to the front cylinders, and they're huge, absolutely huge. They're twice as big. In fact, that was the limitation on the locomotive. How big could they make those front cylinders? Because they're just huge. And of course they had to have they had 133 pound rail, and but they were really good pullers. And in the Appalachians, they would use them to push and pull coal trains, and they were really good. But it was the only one left. Everybody else had gone to simple, which is all 4 sets of cylinders would receive like there it is. That's a Challenger. And you can see all the cylinders are the same size.
Yeah.
And those became very, very popular in the late 30s because it basically replaced two regular steam locomotives, and they were efficient and 4664. So, but again, they were only 7% efficient, so that's the killer. Yeah, when I first saw that, it really hit me that and like Bob said last time, that's all they had, and at 7%, you didn't worry about it back then because fuel was relatively cheap, and that's all you got, so you have to pay it.
So 4664 was like putting 2 Hudsons together.
Yeah.
Huh.
It was heavier, and so yeah, they would pull, and the drivers were a little bit smaller. So this one was a freight locomotive, but the Union Pacific had them with big drivers, and they pulled passenger trains with them.
Huh.
So
on those big front cylinders, since they were so big, the piston in there must have been really heavy.
Oh yeah. It's and then they had big counterweights. Yeah, I think they were 30 inches in diameter, something like that. I mean, it's huge.
Look at the rod, the vertical rod there.
Yeah.
Right in the back end of the cylinder. That thing pivots on a knuckle or something, and that goes back and forth as the drivers move, and that doesn't that represent that the piston inside is going back and forth and back and forth.
And it's mechanical engineers sit and design this stuff, but this is the valve up here.
Yeah.
And when the valve is forward, then it emits steam on this side. And this side's open to the exhaust. And so then the steam pushes the rod back, and then this valve, meanwhile, moves back here. Now the steam will come into the rear of the cylinder, and the front is open to the exhaust. So they perfected this over many years, and they like Bob said last time, they used them from 1820, the 1820s until, well, in this country until 19 the early 60s. These Y6s were amongst some of the last ones to go there, early 60s. In Europe, they went to the 70s, and in some of the countries, I mean the South Africa and a few of the other countries, and some in China, they were still building them, and they used them into the 80s. But the thing that kills you, it's the smoke, the maintenance, and the fuel cost. I mean, it just, you're using, 3 times, well, now 4 times as much fuel as a diesel. So
yeah. Well, I was thinking about how massive that piston is, and the physics of changing direction 180 degrees with all that momentum going one direction and then having to stop and go back the other direction inside of that thing. That's I imagine that was pretty violent in there.
oh yeah, the beauty of it though is because because it's connected to a wheel, it moves, and then it doesn't stop instantly. It just kind of moves, and then it slows down as the wheel comes around like this. So
Yeah.
it's moving fast, and then it slows down, and then it reverses direction, and then it backs up, and then it slows down. And that's the thing that actually saved it. It was, I don't think they didn't intend that, but it was just a natural beauty of the whole system. Because yeah, if you had a piston that had to stop instantaneously and come back, it would just, they would tear themselves apart.
Yeah, that's just that's amazing.
That's an inherent a beauty of the well, and the same thing in internal combustion. You have the crankshaft comes around, and the piston comes up, and then it slows down, and then it starts up, and then it goes fast, and then it slows down again, but it's an inherent advantage to a modern.
So if they built one of these for passenger, then the driver would be bigger.
Yes.
And the overall effect would probably be, because of a larger diameter of the driver, maybe a little smoother.
Yes.
But they're also going to be going a lot faster.
Yes.
So that back and forth will be, that'll be really incredible.
Oh yeah. And these guys were really, and they didn't have computers and anything they just knew how to do this stuff and make and be able to balance everything out. And you see these films of these engines moving along, and the driver and the main rod is going up and down like this, and then it weighs hundreds of pounds, thousands of pounds, and it's just going up and down like this. And so that was one of the beauties of this thing. And then I can find another picture here. Yeah. Okay, sorry. This is the it's their Q1, and it was like, Pennsy and Norfolk and Western was sticking with steam right to the end. They were building these in the late 40s, and even I think the early 50s. So it had a leading truck here, and then it had 3 axles with 6 driving wheels, and they were driven by this set of pistons. And then they had 2 more axles back here, and that was driven by this rear one. And there were a couple of problems with it, but it was on a rigid frame. It was not articulated, and it was not compound. It was just a simple engine. But what they were able to do is reduce the weight of the pistons and the drivers by dividing the power up. And so they kept going with this concept, and then they built an engine.
Yeah, now I can see it.
Okay. Then it's this cylinder back here. They would get crud on the rod, and then of course it would wear the gasket out, and then it would leak. Because
because it was behind the driver.
Yeah.
Instead of in front of it.
That's right.
Oh yeah. Huh.
So then they turned this whole works around, and they put this set in front, and so then they came up with a Q2, basically on this, almost looked like the same frame, and it was a 4464, 8,000 horsepower, and I mean, I think the big boy's only 6,500 or something. I mean, it was huge locomotive, lots of a huge firebox. So it was a 4464 and the Q2, and I think they built 50 or more of them, and they were probably one of the best steam locomotives ever built. But unfortunately, by then the diesels, they were also buying F units, and once the GP9s came out, that was it.
Yeah.
You just couldn't. The economics of the GP9s were so dependable, and the F units, but the GP9s really hit it because they were so dependable that I was reading, and I think I mentioned this before, in Trains magazine, there was a story about this guy who was a roundhouse foreman came in, and he was in whatever the roundhouse is, somewhere down near Cincinnati. Anyway, the Pennsy had a train, that pretty good sized passenger train that ran from Cincinnati to Detroit, and just back and forth. And they ran this T1. I think I got a pic. Let me see.
Okay. Now I can see it.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. There's the 4464.
This is the passenger version of it. It's a fixed
like a
frame.
shark.
Yeah, they're really nice. Baldwin came up with this shark nose that they used, but this was a T1, and they went all out with experimental stuff, and so it's a 444, and I think it was 6,000 or 7,000 horsepower. It could pull 20 coaches at 100 miles an hour all day, no problem.
How could they get so much horsepower out of
big firebox? It's all depends on how much coal you burn, and it was a very efficient firebox, and they had a big stoker, and they had a big boiler in there, and it's how much fuel are you burning, and are you converting that to steam, and then you got the steam, and so it would. And these things, and then they went to the ultimate, which is they went to poppet valves rather than a slider. They went to poppet valve here, and of course that it's more efficient, but it also leads to other problems. So, but they built I think they built about 50 of these things, but they had maintenance problems, and they were very slippery because of that poppet valve. So they were a little bit difficult to start, but once you got them going, they'd pull all day.
Huh.
Well, anyway, the roundhouse foreman comes into this management meeting, and he says, we got to turn the wheels, because they had these things. They had a bunch of these things running, and they also had a couple of General Motors E7s, the long passenger engine.
Right.
And he said, we got to turn the wheels. They had the E7s about 6 months, and he said, we got to turn the wheels on the E7. And these guys, what the heck's wrong with these diesels? We're only on that thing 6 months. How come we gotta turn the wheels already? We haven't turned the wheels on our T1s, and so they're going back and forth, and so one of the guys asked, well, how many miles you got on the T1s? He says, well, we're running about 3,000 miles on each of them in the last 6 months because of maintenance problems and stuff like that. Well, how many miles you got on the E7? 72,000 miles in 6 months. That's only going back and forth between Detroit and Cincinnati, which, the E7s would run and run and run. So
they had to turn the wheels because of how many miles that they'd put on.
Exactly. Yeah. It was just, so these were, it finally, Pennsy just gave up. They just, they were a big coal hauler, and they were in love with steam, and they were very traditional railroads, but they took it to the end. This was kind of probably the ultimate steam engine. You could pull 20, 30 passenger cars at 100 miles an hour, no problem.
Wow. That's incredible, the amount of torque that they were able to generate with that design.
Yeah.
Just amazing.
But it's not articulated, and it's not a mallet because it's simple. Everybody, all the cylinders got the same They're independent from one another, but they all got steam at the same time.